Okay, let's dive right into this explainer of Make It Stick. We're going to discover why pretty much everything we think we know about studying is, surprisingly, completely wrong.
I mean, think about how you prepped for your last big exam. If you're anything like most of us, you probably relied on rereading textbooks, highlighting practically every other sentence, and cramming the night before. Well, it turns out you were likely wasting your time. The science of learning actually shows us that these old standbys are surprisingly inefficient.
And here's why. The truth about effective learning is actually incredibly counterintuitive. There's this great quote from the source material that says, "Learning that's easy is like writing in sand. When learning feels simple and fluid, it's usually here today, gone tomorrow." To make knowledge permanent, we literally have to entirely rethink our approach.
So let's get into Section 1, the illusion of mastery.
You see, our brains are actively tricking us into thinking we've mastered a topic. On one hand, we have massed practice, cramming. It feels so productive in the moment, but those gains, they're totally temporary. On the other hand, we have what experts call desirable difficulties. These require actual hard work and struggle, but they're the only way to build true, lasting mastery.
The real danger here is the illusion of fluency. It goes like this. The more you reread a text, the more familiar it feels, right? And you mistake that cozy familiarity for actual knowledge. Because your eyes can track the words on the page easily, you trick yourself into believing you own the concepts. But let me tell you, recognition is definitely not the same as recall.
Which brings us right to Section 2, the power of retrieval.
So how do we break that illusion? We use the testing effect. Now, this isn't about giving you a grade. It's about the physical act of pulling information out of your brain, instead of just trying to stuff it in. It ties a literal knot in your memory. A perfect example of this is Dr. Mike Ebersold. He used mental retrieval to save a hunter who came in with an incredibly dangerous shotgun wound to the brain. Because Dr. Ebersold constantly engaged in effortful retrieval and reflection on his own time, visualizing steps A, B, C, and D, and adapting suturing techniques in his head, he was able to reflexively stop a massive sinus vein hemorrhage in just 60 seconds. He didn't just read about surgery, he mentally practiced pulling that knowledge out, so when the crisis hit, his learning was an instant reflex.
And we see this exact same thing on paper, too. Take an 8th grade science class at Columbia Middle School. The students who just passively reviewed their study material, they put in the time, sure, but they averaged a C+.
But look at this massive jump. The students who were given low-stakes quizzes to practice retrieving that exact same material scored an A on their finals. That is the testing effect in action. Just the act of pulling the information from their own brains elevated their retention by a full letter grade. Pretty wild, right?
All right, let's move to Section 3, mix up your practice.
This concept completely shatters the old myth of practice, practice, practice on a single skill. It's called interleaving. To show you how this works, there was this fascinating experiment where 8-year-olds practiced tossing beanbags into buckets.
And here is the crazy part. When it came time for the final test, which was a 3-foot toss, the kids who mixed up their practice with 2-foot and 4-foot buckets completely crushed the kids who exclusively practiced the 3-foot toss. The winners never even practiced the target distance. But by varying their practice, their brains developed a flexible movement vocabulary that translated to any distance.
And this applies to complex academic subjects too. Think about calculating geometric solids. Kids who used massed practice, just doing the same problem type over and over, felt confident initially, but bombed the test with a measly 20% score. But those who used interleaved practice, yeah, it felt confusing and difficult at first, but it resulted in a massive 63% success rate. Mixing up the problem types taught them not just the math formulas, but the crucial skill of identifying which formula to use.
Okay, moving on to Section 4, embrace desirable difficulties.
We know the data, but let's see what happens when the stakes are quite literally life or death. When learning feels smooth, you're just skimming the surface. Take Marine Lieutenant Mia Blundetto at jump school. Notes aren't allowed there. Instead, you learn through the extreme desirable difficulty of constant physical testing.
By spacing and interleaving these increasingly difficult physical steps, like jumping from platforms, dropping from zip lines, and exiting a 34-foot tower, Mia developed a highly flexible movement vocabulary, and that allowed her to react instantly when she actually collided with another jumper mid-air. The extreme difficulty of the training wasn't some kind of punishment, it was the exact mechanism that hardwired her survival.
It's the same story for pilots.
Take Matt Brown. He didn't learn to fly a plane on one engine by sitting through mind-numbing fire hose-style PowerPoint lectures. No way. He mastered it through spaced, varied retrieval practice in a terrifying flight simulator. The simulator forced him to retrieve his knowledge under immense pressure, and that cemented it into a lifelong, unbreakable capability.
Which leads us to our final part. Section 5, Making Learning Stick. Okay, we've busted the old myths, so let's distill all of this into a toolkit that you can start using right now. First up, spaced practice. You have to allow a slight feeling of forgetting to set in between your study sessions. That feeling of, wait, what was that again? Forces your brain to work harder to recall the information, and that mental strain is exactly what triggers long-term memory consolidation.
If you're a fan of flashcards, the Leitner box is a phenomenal step-by-step method for this. It basically guarantees that you focus intensely on your weak spots. You space out the material you already know well, letting a little bit of that helpful forgetting happen, while relentlessly drilling yourself on the tricky cards in box 1 that you're struggling to pull from memory.
So your crucial takeaway here is to completely abandon the illusion of fluency. Upgrade your study toolkit right now. Toss out the highlighters and seriously, let go of the cramming. Start utilizing self-quizzing, interleave your subjects, and honestly, welcome the feeling of struggle. That struggle means you're actually learning.
I'll leave you with this final thought to ponder the next time you sit down to study. Are you going to keep choosing the comfortable illusion of knowing, or are you willing to let go of what feels easy, do the hard work, and actually make it stick? If you embrace the challenge, I promise you'll be amazed at what you're truly capable of mastering.